Hello, and welcome to the Catapult themed attraction podcast. It's Easter here in the UK, and we're celebrating with Easter eggs. No, not the chocolate ones this time. We're talking about the Easter eggs in theme parks and visitor attractions. Those hidden secrets or details designed to be discovered by the guest. Get ready for some mind-blowing facts with three of our design team: Andy Sinclair Harris, Lillian Bedder, and Alice Young. Let's get cracking. So, Andy Sinclair Harris, creative director at Katapult. What is your most favourite Easter egg in a theme park that you know of?
That's a fantastic question. I think for me, my favourite one, being a huge Disney fan, are the windows on Main Street. And I think a lot of people know about those. They're quite widely known within the industry, but I think that a good chunk of guests wouldn't know about them by just looking up at the windows and just think, yeah, these are proprietaries, these are businesses here on Main Street. That's a nice thing. But to know more deeply about that, when you see, Elias Disney, and then knowing that's Walt's dad, and he's got a building, firm which has allowed Disneyland to be built. For me, that one has a really lovely depth of history and story about it, which I think if you know, it's a wonderful thing to know. So that would be my favorite. Windows on Main Street.
And what's a couple of the other examples that they have on the windows?
Oh, he's testing me now, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
There was a really lovely one actually. The former, I think he was one of the chief executives of Disney, Frank Wells. He tragically passed away in a helicopter crash back in the 90s, 94 or something. And to kind of pay homage to him, how he'd helped kind of revive Disney to kind of bring it back to some luster,
Oh,
they
wow.
added like a tribute window to him, and I think called Seven Peaks or something, because he'd climbed. He was an avid mountaineer as well. He'd climbed all these like peaks. So it was a beautiful line about like summiting things and stuff like that. So again, that's a wonderful homage to someone who's no longer with us as well. So there's some kind of windows there that have relevance to people with Disney who are still alive, and then you've also got ones that have been wonderful tributes to people who are no longer with us. So Alice and Mark Davis have a joint windows, like a husband and wife. Their husband and wife team used to work for Disney, and they've got this beautiful tribute one of and she was a costumier, so they've kind of got this dual window ship. So there's some really beautiful ones. There must be a book about it somewhere, because there's just so many fantastic examples.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, when we think about the Easter eggs and we talk about it in theme parks and visitor attractions, we always see it as like a cheeky thing, something that might have just crept in. It might be something a little bit silly, but actually the fact that it could be a tribute as well is
Absolutely.
quite special. And Alice, what sort of examples kind of tickle your minds when it comes to Easter eggs?
So I feel like I'm going to pick something that's a lot more lowbrow than Andy's beautiful tributes. I do love the tributes to artists and finding them amongst the park. And the kind of tributes to Imagineers I also love. But I also love the silly interactive ones, like in the Muppet Vision Theatre, which I'm just nostalgic about because they're closing it. You've got the key under mat sign, and then if you lift the mat, there is a key sort of screwed into the ground. So it's like a combination of a findable Easter egg and an interactive, very, very low technology, super analog. All you can do is find a key, but everyone is thrilled by it. And the same with in Tower of Terror, where you can find little hidden details amongst the queue. It's the most passive interactive parts of a queue, but people find them so exciting, and they're so easy to implement.
Tell me a little bit more about those queue line ones, because they sound fascinating.
Well, that's the stuff I feel like it's mentioned all the time, is as you go into Tower of Terror, which I am a wimp. That's the one ride that I don't do. Love the queue, don't like the ride. So as you go in, there's a sort of I don't know what you call it, a listing of all of the floors of the
That's
building.
right.
And certain letters have fallen down to read a sort of hidden note at the bottom. So you peer over the screen, you can read "Take the stairs" or "Evil Tower, you will die," or whatever it is at the moment, made up of the letters that have fallen over. And everyone does it. Everyone peers in because it feels very secret and personal that you found it, even though there's such well-known details in it.
Oh, I've just thought I'm imagining a world where people are going to listen to this podcast and then hold up queue lines.
Yeah.
Because of the tip-offs we're giving them. But that's great. Lillian, I bet you've got some fantastic examples that you've seen.
Yeah, I think in terms of Easter eggs, as one that I think is really good is there's so many in Toy Story Land in Disney. And I think that's just because of the opportunity of the land. So because of the nature of it, you can see like any opportunity to sneak in an Easter egg, there's one. So because there's a lot of barcodes, there's a lot of dates, there's a lot of like well-known like dates, numbers, anything like that. They're usually of some sort of significance. And just because the land is designed in, it's kind of this gorgeous upscaled world, there's a lot of world building there for Toy Story as well. So there's like nods to Andy's address. There's kind of nods to, I think on Rex's, there's a Rex box somewhere, and it says that they also made another dinosaur toy, which we're assuming is like Trixie from Toy Story. So it just, everywhere you look in the land, there's just very fun, quirky nods that kind of build the world of Toy Story without you even realizing it. I think I'd saw one that was really intricate, that was some dominoes, and the dots on the dominoes were the numbers of like a very iconic like date, which you would never think that that's like an Easter egg that you would just pick up on, but it's there. And if you know what you're looking for, then it's a really like cool nod to, a bit of Disney history, which I thought was really cool.
And it was really interesting when we were speaking about pulling together this podcast a couple of weeks ago about the importance of layers in story. And that's one of the big drivers with Easter eggs, is that for those absolute super fans that, know books word for word or know films line for line, they know what to look out for. But Andy, for everyone else who may just pass it, it just looks like something nice. And I guess that's the beauty of Easter eggs, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you want an Easter egg, the actual the best Easter eggs are ones that you shouldn't really ever know. They shouldn't stand out. Obviously, they have to be, for us as designers and creators of theme parks, have to be thematically consistent. That's the first thing you have to be able to appreciate, that the fact that it can live within a land. It shouldn't draw attention to itself. But as Alice, that wonderful example of the Tower of Terror, that is the kind of like the tip board at the Hollywood Tower Hotel. So we wouldn't ever think anything more of it. That's thematically consistent with the actual kind of attraction there. But a closer look reveals just that little bit of interplay and something more, depth of story. And we talk a lot about Katapult, about paddlers, swimmers and divers, and it's something that was so important to our industry, the fact that you need to provide guests all three of those options to do that. So some guests just love to come and paddle their feet and like come to a theme park and just enjoy the ride and take kind of a superficial look at things. Other guests have a little bit more of like a swim, and they they will engage with things. And as you pointed out, Robbie, other guests really have a massive knowledge and they're huge super fans. They want to dive into those details and see those details and be rewarded with them. And that's some of the work we can do as well with those kind of guests who are really the fans and the kind of the deep seeking of knowledge. We can give them those fantastic little nuggets that are just there to be discovered.
And I do wonder whether Easter eggs play more of a critical role in the operations of theme parks. I don't know if there's ever been a study into Easter eggs in like every themed attraction, but they do play quite a pivotal role. I mean, for the guest, it's amazing. There's an experience. They feel like the in crowd. There's something extra that they can do with their kids, but maybe for operators, I mean, you might be taken away from those busy queue lines, or actually pushing people around the park in different ways is actually alleviating high footfall areas. Is there any other advantages you can think of that Easter eggs may give, other than just something that's amazing to do if you know about it?
I think like all of that is true, as well as like it gives the impression that there's more to find at all times. So as well as like maybe it's keeping people away from queues because they're looking in all the areas, it also keeps you occupied in a queue because you're constantly looking within all the details and seeing there's always something hidden more. And I think that's why we talked about there's a reason there's no clear list and map of hidden Mickeys or clear list of Easter eggs. Even like a study of Easter eggs makes me a little nervous because there's no fun in like analyzing the magic.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that's just my brain. That's just my job. I'm so sorry.
You would never make a podcast about it. That's a really bad idea.
No, horrendous. Don't do that.
But there is something very, I don't know what, like elusive about them. Like you don't want to look too closely and pinpoint them too much.
Like catching smoke, yeah.
Yes, 100%. But I also think the really detailed Easter eggs, like the Main Street windows, even those serve a function because by providing them, so I think like in Paris at least, some of the windows are like a music teacher and a dentist. And because you have those windows that tell you that there's stuff going on, you add to the soundscape. So when you're walking by, you can hear a singing lesson happening, or you can hear like quite a nasty dentist appointment happening that doesn't sound particularly pleasant. And it builds the world around you. So they're like super high details for people who know the Imagineers and know what names to look for, but it's also just really like laying out the depth in the world and making it a much richer environment.
And it kind of, you made me think around actually an art gallery experience that I went to a few weeks ago, which was about bees, funny enough. And they had, I don't know if you'd call it an Easter egg. I'm not sure if it is, but they had an interactive piece of glass, let's say, and it was fogged over with sort of like bee paraphernalia. But I knew there was a piece of interpretation behind it. Only when you held your hand on there for around 10 seconds did the fog fade away, and then it revealed, which was one of the most amazing interpretations I've seen, which is an old beehive that had been formed in a violin. So you could see the structure of it inside. It was absolutely beautiful. But after I did it, obviously, because I analysed the hell out of everything that I go to, how many people just walk past that? How many people just go, oh, it's not working, forget it, and move on and not enjoy sort of that experience? Do we need to have more spaces in our attractions that I guess offers something a bit more impromptu, or offers something that for the patient people, for those that are willing to get deeper into the story, they can get something even more amazing from their visit?
Yeah, I wonder if it is that nature of why Easter eggs are so successful, is also that curiosity. And I think you can also allow a guest who is a little bit curious the opportunity to dive in a bit deeper if they want to. And I think sometimes, especially when we're looking at the design of an attraction, you almost look at it as a beautifully put together puzzle. But sometimes there's little pockets of surprise and delight, there's little pockets of mystery, really engaging for a guest to kind of get involved in the story more that we're trying to create or tell. And I wonder if, we should always think about, when we're designing something, is there an opportunity to create a little bit of that exploration for the guests so that they feel well and truly woven into, the thing that we are creating? Because it's so easy to slip into like designing the most perfect thing ever. But sometimes it's that little bit of, let the guests fill in that little bit of like 5% and allow them to really kind of like be curious around what it is that they're involved in. I think it just helps to elevate it that little bit more.
And it makes me think of almost like the huge rise of like geocaching a few years ago, where this is pretty much it, isn't it? Which is an outdoor escape room where you've just got to have to find the answers yourselves, sort of thing. I guess the one thing I would say about these little things is, how do you incorporate kids? How do you incorporate people that may not know the story? Is it that they're not supposed to? What, Andy, you mentioned earlier about there's only a certain amount of people that understand it. What is that percentage? Is it 5% of guests that come through the doors?
Well, I've got that data right here, actually, Robbie. Let me get that data. Actually, I'm not joking.
No way.
Because that... So sorry. You're such a data. I wish I had that data for you. No, it's a really good point. As Alice alluded to, I think it's much more sort of esoteric than that. But you make a really good point, and Alice mentioned it earlier about hidden Mickeys. I think hidden Mickeys are a perfect entry point for kids to have like an example in a theme park, especially a Disney theme park, obviously, for how they can find the most famous symbol in the world. One of them, the 3 circles interlocked. It's not an official thing done by Disney, but obviously they are present in most things within Disney. And obviously, as a former Imagineer myself, that there is a real instinct sometimes if you're doing a tile or a mosaic, it's like just as easy to kind of put those 3 discrete circles that interlock to make something that resembles a Mickey Mouse head. And they are everywhere. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands. And as Alice said, it's not a good thing to kind of say, here's the official guidebook, because there's nothing official about them. They're just a wonderful, whimsical thing that may or may not exist. So I think that's a great one for kids. It's like if you have that knowledge, if you see them there, you think you found that wonderful little thing. And there's still loads that people haven't seen. There are really, really discreet ones around the Disney theme parks that have just been put there and still waiting to be discovered. So I think that's a perfect example for kids to find their favorite character.
So if I was to ask you outright, have you put Easter eggs into a theme park? Your answer would be maybe.
I couldn't comment. Yes,
confirm nor deny.
I can neither confirm nor deny if my initials and date of birth have appeared in a Disney theme park at any point in time.
Fine. Okay. Lillian, come on.
I think I could also maybe no nor confirm nor deny, but I think it's when we're looking at Easter eggs, especially when you are involved in an attraction, whatever it might be, it could be an exhibition, it could be a hotel, a restaurant. I think there's always that element of you want to put your print on there somehow. There's like a bit of an instinct as a creative to kind of want to put a bit of you in there, and you do that anyway because you're the one designing it, but you can always maybe push it a little bit further by putting, I don't know, like a family member's name in it potentially if you can. But I wondered if, like, is that kind of why we also do it? Is, do we want to leave a bit of our mark there, but also I mean, every time you see a name, or, it's somewhere in an experience, it's usually someone that's been involved, or it's like a celebration of the team. Like, you usually find that it's a celebration of everyone that's been involved. Like, usually 9 times out of 10, if you see a name in a theme park, it's someone's name that is relevant to what you're looking at or experiencing. So yeah, I think it's almost a bit of, when we are looking at these things and designing these things, we kind of a little bit instinctual kind of go, well, how could I maybe just do a little bit of a cheeky little nod here or there? But it's more just, like I say, it feels more like just putting your mark there, or leaving your thumbprint essentially on a project, because it's also a bit of, it's going to be there hopefully forever, right? You want to be able to go back there in like 5 years and be like, I did that, like I put that there. And I wonder if, like, when we are designing experiences, that there's just a little bit of an instinct to maybe put something in there.
But it comes from a sense of pride. And sorry, Andy, I cut you off, but that element of, this is amazing. It's an end credit to the film. It's being synonymous with something that you've absolutely loved doing.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. The fact that as theme park designers, we work in a very interesting medium. It's that blending of theatricality, film design, and there's a real visceral reality to it. But there are no film credits in the work that we do. There's no applause for the amazing team of designers who are sat in front of you right now. So it's really nice to have that. Sometimes, the windows are Main Street or other more discreet things in a queue. If you walked past a queue line and you saw Professor Bedder in there, that's a really nice Easter egg and a film credit to someone who's worked on that. So it's a really nice way, as Leanne said, to have that depth of story and to validate and to celebrate the people who've worked on it. Those are our kind of film credits, and it's in keeping with our industry to make them something you discover, that they don't stand out in front of everything else.
As a
No, go
guest
for it.
also, it's the closest you get to kind of locking eyes with the designer, because designers should be completely invisible in a land.
Yes.
And if you're the kind of people, like I was the kind of kid, and I know, Andy, you were too, you have to know what's behind the curtain. You have to see how things are made. So if you feel like you can see through and see kind of like behind the curtain and who made it, especially now, because they feel so, like, theme parks feel so grand, and like knowing there's actually a human behind it can feel very special. So I think being able to find those details for yourself becomes its own trail.
And Alice, just describe a moment when you found an Easter egg in an attraction. What was that kind of sense like? What did you feel? Who was you with? What is it that's so sort of within us as guests that make us light up at the fact of finding something?
Gosh, I don't know. I feel like I'm a terrible researcher, that I don't know how surprised I've been by things, more if I've gone, I'm the person that you sit next to on a ride and I'm nudging you and being like, over there, and the history of that and the history of this is. So I don't know if I've had an organic moment, which is kind of terrible. But there's some kind of joy in like seeing behind, I keep saying behind the curtain. Let's change up the vocabulary. You get to see the sort of core of what's been built and how it's been put together. And I especially think it's fun because for us, we know how many iterations a design goes through. And a lot of the time you can see hints to those as well. So if you are like quote unquote in the know, you get to like feel a little bit like you were part of the journey of how this was made. You know a little bit more about the history of it. And it's got kind of two histories, any sort of experience space, because you've got the history that it's sort of selling as a story, and also like the history of the sort of design of it, and also like any previous ride that might have sat in that position. So you're going to have two depths to go into, and it feels very exciting to acknowledge the story that you're in, and then also get to said it one more time.
I feel like if there was an official sort of like tour guide of Easter eggs, then Alice, that's the job for you.
But couldn't possibly. It's not. They're not to be taught. They are. You gotta find them. I mean, not me, clearly.
Of course. I completely forgot about that. I think what's good about this discussion is it's opening my mind up to everything else in the world around what you could class as an Easter egg. So it's so much made about the McDonald's secret menu. Music festivals that have hidden stages where you can go and see acoustic sets from some of the bigger artists in a very intimate venue. Those moments of excitement, those moments of joy in another world, miserable world sometimes, can actually be really good. Okay, cool. So I'm going to put you all on the spot now. I'm going to have a bit of a brainstorming session. Just imagine that we've got a brief through for a themed resort. Okay, and we're in charge of a hotel. Your job is to design it. Now, the theme of this hotel is chocolate. Okay, and what would your Easter eggs be in a hotel room, in a restaurant, in the hotel, and whereabouts would you hide? Who's got some ideas?
I wonder if there could be something, when you mentioned a restaurant there or something, I wonder if there's, or maybe as you check in, you could be given a box of chocolates, and then you selecting something gives you a unique experience. So from on the bottom of one of those could be the room number, it could be, or if it was a dining experience, your menu is chosen by. There's something nice about having a box of chocolates. I feel like someone should make a film quote of that. But bringing it out and having it be a unique choice that you've made, and of course within those Easter eggs, maybe one of those is a very, it's a golden kind of not golden ticket, that's IP based, but something that's really unique and has a beautiful kind of message to it.
I like that. So it's almost like a random experience.
Yeah,
you don't know what you're going to get out of the back of it. Almost like you could almost tie in sort of like a personality test to that sort of.
That's
what
lovely.
Sort of chocolate would
Flavor
you choose
profile,
out of
absolutely.
Yeah. Based on that, we're going to send you to this room or whatever. Lillian, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I almost wondered whether you could do something that was sort of like, especially for like an in-room experience, like what if somewhere in the room there is a chocolate vault somewhere in the room and you have to find it, and in there is like the best of the best chocolates from this non-IP chocolate branded resort. But could you not just give it straight off to the guests, make them work for it? I don't know, but in like a fun way where, you could easily hide all different kinds of chocolate around the resort, but it's more of if you find it, it's like you can have it sort of situation. But yeah, I mean, also it would be everywhere for you, right? I'm imagining that it would just be handed to you every 2 seconds. Somebody would be like, here, chocolate for you. So I think it's even nicer if there's actually secret chocolate or surprise chocolate that I'm not expecting, or there's just areas around the resort where I can get my hands on limited edition chocolate that isn't just easily accessible.
And I wonder whether people may crave sort of savoury food after a bit. It's like crisps. Because
we came to the
I'm
wrong
done.
resort.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. As a diabetic, I've come to this wrong resort. Yeah.
Yeah, you want the crisp resort, which is just down the road, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Alice, what random ideas do you have?
So I think it's similar to what Liliane's saying, but I wonder if it's a bit more like your bee experience. Is there a case where if you stick around or if you do something within the hotel, say it's like a grand suite and there's a hot tub or some kind of fancy bath experience, if you settle in and have a relaxing afternoon and the room fills with steam, does that trigger truffles and champagne to appear? Does you engaging in the space and like spending time trigger different chocolates? Is there more playful ones where if you like play for so long or stay in a space, like earning your chocolate and feeling like it's revealed to you feels very exciting, depending on the route you take.
I love that. And if we're going for it being okay for guests to just gorge themselves on chocolate, then I love to put forward the idea of an afternoon tea with an actual chocolate teapot, where if it melts, you really don't care. You put some gloves on and you just scoop that thing up. Just keep going. Why not? Indulge yourself. And
it could be a sort of will it cake or is it cake kind of situation where also, the cake stand is also chocolate and the knives and the forks. There's no clean way of eating here.
Dear. Well, thank you for divulging in that random conversation. We'll see if that makes it to the edit.
You can't argue there's not creativity on demand with this team. Look at that. Amazing.
So true. Cool. Andy, have you got any other examples of really good ones, really good Easter eggs, whether it's in theme parks or actually in smaller attractions where you've seen it and gone, do you know what? It's a hidden masterpiece that has just encapsulated my attention or the kids' attentions.
Oh wow, that's a really big one. There was other one that I wanted to kind of mention that Alice kind of alluded to earlier. That as designers, as theme park designers, sometimes it's become almost a mission now within our kind of industry that when an attraction goes, you have to give kind of relevancy to it. You have to give kind of homage to it. So, for example, when the Jaws ride was taken out from Universal Studios to make way for the Harry Potter, the Wizarding World expansion became Diagon Alley, so many of the designers who worked on that wanted to give proper homage, and it's almost like a rite of passage to have that. And so if you go into, I think it's in Nocturne Alley, the Shrunken Heads in one of the shops occasionally will sing one of the sea shanties from Jaws, Show Me the Way to Go Home, which I think is a wonderful addition. And I think on the exterior of King's Cross there's a record shop and there's things in there. I won't say everyone to the guests can go kind of find these, but I think those are those really wonderful things that you give, like I said, a nod and a wink to what's been there before. So you're actually kind of paying homage to it. And again, it's like it's something you have to do. And the other one this is the most random Easter egg I could think of. I thought you guys would all get a kick out of this. And actually, Alice already mentioned it. So going to Muppet Vision, which is going to close soon. So if you're hearing this podcast, haven't been there, you race to Orlando right now to get into the Muppet Vision. But in the kind of pre-show, there is a kind of like a rope netting there with lots of these kind of cubes in there. I don't know if any of you know of what I'm talking about, but it's right in there. And everyone's always wondered what it is. It's just like this net with all of these kind of like cubes in there. And it's actually meant, and this was from Jim Henson allegedly, it's actually meant to be a net full of Jello, which is what Americans call jelly. And Annette Funicello was a Disney Mouseketeer. She was a very famous singer as well and a favorite of the company. So that's something that I would say 99.9% of people from this podcast are going to know. That's a net full of Jello, Annette Funicello. So it's a Muppet gag, it's an Easter egg, but there you go. That's a really deep cut Easter egg for you guys that's going to be soon lost to history, unfortunately. So see it while you can.
I never in my wildest dreams have picked up on that.
There you go.
So
yeah,
thank
happy
you.
to help you out, Robbie.
That's very good. Lillian, any smaller attractions other than sort of the big theme parks where you think Easter eggs or, these sort of like small, excitable, findy moments have been done really well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to talk about kind of big attractions, and but something that I feel like there's Easter eggs all the way through is just when we talk around like queue lines, just exclusively queue lines, and that could be queue lines for literally anywhere. It could be any park, it could be one of the big ones, one of the small ones, but there's always some form of Easter egg hiding in there. I think Andy touched on a good one as well. Like you'll usually see if a ride is replacing something, that you'll see some form of homage in the queue line to the old ride. So it's always worth looking out there to see if you can spot anything. Props, usually any sort of prop that's from an old ride usually gets a second life in a new ride, but dressed as something else. And, it's really fun to sort of look at queue line specifically because we see it in attractions and we see it in theme parks in general. But especially queue lines. A lot of queue lines are mostly like 50% Easter eggs, storytelling, homages to other things, celebrations of story from the IP. But yeah, I'd always sort of say like, always pay attention in the queue lines. They're usually elaborate for a reason. And there's usually some real hidden gems in there. If you see it and you can see it and it looks really cool if you don't know what it is, amazing. If you kind of have been around, you've been to the parks before, you've been to the attractions before, then sometimes you might see something that looks familiar, but just in the wrong place.
That begs the question, if you see an Easter egg but your friends or relatives don't, should you say anything?
There's something that you have to, right? You kind of go, oh, look, there's that thing. Like, look, let me tell you about this.
Through the joy of showing off. We found it first. Alice is
Yeah,
nodding. Alice is nodding. Yeah.
We do. I think there's something in it where you want to, because we're involved in it all the time. Like it's our 9 to 5s. And I think when you're with someone that is maybe like, it's their one trip a year, they've gone to like somewhere that maybe you've been over 100 times in your like career, and they're there on their 1 year trip and they see something. I think you just kind of instinctually go like, I'd love to tell you about this because we know it's there. Someone else might not know it's there. And you know that they'll get some form of joy out of learning more about something that they're experiencing. And it comes from that too, of just like sharing that knowledge and sharing the joy to someone that would definitely kind of appreciate it. And you know that person will also then in a year's time tell it to somebody else who they're with, who's on their annual trip to the park. And it's just like a chain reaction of information. That's how Easter eggs start. It's a chain of people telling each other that they've seen something and them telling somebody else, and that's how they live, is through people telling each other every time they're in the same location with somebody new.
And in a world where we almost get bombarded by too much information or misinformation, these things live because we don't get any sort of information. So you can see why people look at certain things in theme parks and go, oh, is this a nod towards what's going to happen in the next movie franchise? You know.
Yeah, we love exploring and really like peeling away and just kind of scratching what's beneath the surface. Like there's just something in our nature where we something like that. You go like, oh, okay, that sounds like it's plausible. How? Let me find out. I'm going to really dive into why this is. And I think that's just us as humans. That's like our nature, isn't it? Like we love scratching beneath the surface and seeing what's there.
Yeah.
We're just
curious.
yeah, really inquisitive.
I think there's also a part of us that we want to try and create a pattern or find a pattern.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've seen that, so this must be the case. You know, you can almost see people going through that in their minds. Alice, what other examples have you got that you just love the idea of?
Well, this has reminded me, I do love to eavesdrop and hear the kind of, it's like that whisper game, the way that one person nudges someone and tells them what an Easter egg means. And then 2 years later, they're sharing it in all different ways. And there's all this deep lore about the parks, and Disney films get the same thing. Like you've got the Moana thing, and there's all sorts of speculation about, like, I think the Little Mermaid has a link to Frozen because they've all got it interlinked. I think a really fun Easter egg that really like rewards curiosity is picking up phones and being able to hear stuff. Audio clips are always good. I know like Punch Drunk use this in their walkthrough theatre, so it's like even if it's sort of secondary to whatever the key story is, got it in Disney, definitely got it in like escape rooms and things. Like, it's just something so fun about picking up something and being rewarded that this is actually an attractable element. I think what is it? Is it a Mega Mart? I think they use it as well for some of the story elements. You get to pick it up. And I always think audio works really well because it can feel really personal. I think there's some gravestones in Haunted Mansion that if you put your ear to them, you can hear like a heartbeat and things like that. And that, like, a kid could be leaning on it and suddenly they get their own interaction. So you've got to add in those extra layers of soundscape.
Wow. I completely agree. With the audio one, I had a brilliant example a couple of weeks ago when I went to the Friends exhibition in London, and they'd created one of the sets from the episode where Friends comes to London, and they had an old-fashioned telephone booth, and it rang twice maybe, and we was in that room for about 20 minutes. So the chances that people were going to walk past and not hear that or not even think to pick it up was quite high. Luckily, we walked in as it rang, and I had the just inbuilt curiosity to just pick it up because I thought it'd be funny, even if there was no one on the end of it. And they piped through the audio of Phoebe from the episode, exactly what she was saying during the episode. And it was just, it was like, I handed the handset over to my wife. I was like, oh my God, it's Phoebe. It's Phoebe. Listen to her. Because in that moment, it genuinely felt like I was speaking to her. So things that was hidden, but there is something not just about seeing a physical Easter egg, but hearing it, or I don't know, tangible ones. I have absolutely no idea, but so many different ways where we can kind of encapsulate guests and sort of just give them that added experience that keeps them coming back for more. Andy, a final thought from you?
I would, again, I think the final thought for me is I would encourage guests, as we've talked about, anyone visiting an experience or a theme park, is to look closer and to question. And as we've all said, curiosity it might have killed the cat, but it won't kill the theme park attraction. And hopefully you will enjoy your time there. So I would say question things and look a little bit deeper. So taking a look at the superficiality and then looking deeper into the stories and questioning. And if you see a date, you see a character, what do you think it could be? What could it relate to? And I would imagine people listen to this podcast have an appreciation for theme parks and can connect the dots. So I would say look a little bit closer and find those Easter eggs.
Lillian, what's your top tips?
I think I would also put one in there for the designers and the creatives as well. I think when we're making experiences, then just see what you can add there, but not just in like a personal way, but really think about your audience, think about the guests, think about where your experience is going and how can you add those hidden layers into the experiences that will, really enhance that guest's experience of when they're in an attraction. And I think it's, really look at the world that you're in and how can you expand on that and how can you create a really exclusive kind of look and feel for a guest in like the story world. through using really fun things like hidden Easter eggs, it's a really lovely way of world building without having to tell the guests too much.
And finally, Alice, top tips, but also, are you going to commit to being a tour guide for Easter eggs in theme parks?
I feel like we've covered so many of the top tips. Definitely, I think layers is the key one. If we're talking to designers, I think keeping all 3 layers is so key to having like a rich design and getting those details in, especially if it feels like you're being a bit self-indulgent and you're putting your own credit in. It will add depth. Like, do it. It's the fun credit that you get to do, and it allows the, like, every part of the story to get richer. And I could not possibly comment on becoming a tour guide. It's a completely secret operation. And they'll come for me if they know, so I have to.
If you want to talk to Alice, you have to wait for the phone, the Friends Experience to ring
Yeah.
to see if she's on the end of it. Yeah.
Sometimes it's Phoebe, sometimes it's me. Really just depends.
Yeah.
Come on.